This is KUGAN CASSIUS for IFL TV in association with MTK Global. Absolutely delighted to be joined by, via Zoom, Mr. Football himself, Gary Lineker. Gary, how are you?
I'm good, KUGAN. Yeah, good, fine. Kind of a bit bored, ready to see some live sport, but apart from that, I'm all right. Yeah.
Good to hear, good to hear. I did want to kind of jump into kind of the football situation at the moment. I'm not sure you know any more than anyone else about what the situation is and when hopefully it's going to return behind closed doors. What can you tell us about this, Gary, to your understanding?
Well, I'm probably not much more clued up than you, but from my understanding, they're going to try probably around the weekend, 19th, 20th. There's going to be a lot of football. I think pretty much every game possibly will be on television. I think that's sort of the plan, obviously behind closed doors. Obviously, given the nature of the virus, if it flares up again, if there are a lot of cases in one club, then who knows, it's quite fluent. So I think if all goes well, we'll probably try and follow roughly what the Germans have been doing. And that seems to have been okay so far. And I think it's good to get the football back. And I think it's good to try and conclude this season. I think to me, that's the fairest thing. You know, you could say, well, we need to get it out of the way or cancel it so we can start next season on time. But there's no guarantees that next season something might happen. So I think the fairest way is to finish this season and then reevaluate when this season's finished and see where we are, where the virus is. Can we start again now? Do we delay it a month? But at least then everyone's on a level playing field. You'll start on 0 points and beginning of the cup ties, etc. But it is complex, it is complicated, and it could change.
It is, I mean, I'm an Arsenal fan, but you have to have some sympathy for Liverpool, obviously, who are running away with the title. And regardless of them finishing the season and obviously going to go on and win the league, it will kind of cast a cloud over it in years to come that there was this missing period out of a title-winning season for their first one in about 25 years.
Yeah, of course. I've got more sympathy for you being an Arsenal fan than I have for fans of Liverpool at the moment. But
fair enough.
No, I think it's, well, there'll be mixed emotions. I think Liverpool fans will be desperately keen for them to finish the season so they can justifiably get the trophy. Obviously, they probably won't be able to celebrate that trophy in the stadium with their team, which is probably the downside. But I think they'd take this over it being cancelled and not winning it, obviously. So there's no perfect ending this season. There's no perfect scenario. Behind closed doors football, I don't think any of us are going to pretend it's the same as it is when there are fans there. But it's better than nothing. And I think Liverpool fans will agree that will be better, certainly, than not finishing the season and not winning that title that is obviously inevitable.
I've never seen so many people in the UK take an interest in German football over the last...
I know.
It's mad, but it does show that it can be done. Obviously, the obvious of the lacking atmosphere goes without saying, but it can be done. So yeah, I suppose we'll take that as an end-of-season kind of finish.
Yeah, I think... I mean, BT got something like 650,000 viewers for that first German game. Now, it doesn't sound much, but if you think about the overall TV, some Twitter page put it up against Midsummer Murders on ITV, which obviously everyone can see, everyone could watch. But, you know, not everyone's got a subscription to BT. But 650,000 people watching a German football match that, to be perfectly honest, most people won't really care about one way or the other in this country, other than those people that follow all kinds of football, is a remarkable number, really. I think normally you would get probably, I don't know, just a few thousand watching that here in the UK. So it just shows you the hunger for some football that we have, and it shows you the power of the game. So when the Premier League starts, it will be really interesting to see you know, how many people will want to watch football. Whether people will stick with it in the long term behind closed doors, I think there might be a loss of interest to a degree. But I think we're craving football. I think we need a bit of it, and in whatever format at the moment. So I can't wait till it gets cracking again. And it will be a bit odd, but I still think when you really care about the result, when it's your team, it won't make that much difference when the crowd's not there. It will certainly do so when it's a neutral match.
Well, over the last few years, as painful being an Arsenal fan, as you can appreciate, I suppose we get to a point of the season where we just think to ourselves, I wish we could just start the season again. And that seems to be like the trend every year for Arsenal. So whether they would have made a top 4 finish had the season have ended a couple of weeks ago, I don't know. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of get your opinion about Arsenal. Obviously, you kind of, towards the back end of your career, when kind of the Wenger years started at Arsenal, we were kind of spoilt with some of the best football teams that the Premier League's ever seen, the Bergkamp, Henry eras. But what do you think of what's happened to Arsenal? Haven't won a league trophy since 2004 and have kind of even dropped off the top 4 finish that they were always accustomed to having.
I think it's just the nature of the game in this country. It's hugely competitive, our league, perhaps more so than many others. And it throws up different teams in different eras. Even if we've seen with Manchester United in recent years as well, despite all their dominance for so long, you can't expect it. But clubs that have had it for a period then get a bit spoiled. But football is kind of cyclical in many ways, particularly for the big clubs. It's usually 2 different clubs, or perhaps 3 sometimes, at one given time that fight for the title. We had that long period of Arsenal and Manchester United when it was them, and then it was kind of Chelsea and Manchester United, and now it's 2 different clubs again. Obviously, with Manchester City and Liverpool. And Liverpool had their time way back in the 70s and 80s in particular. So that's kind of how football works. It's difficult when you're a fan of that team, especially when you're used to success, because then you've got to deal with watching football without that constant success that you've had. So, and I think if you look at Manchester United and Arsenal in particular, I think whilst they obviously reap the rewards of loyalty to their managers over a long period of time, they have a massive amount of success. But I think when there's a figure that's so dominant at a club, I think it's very difficult after that for the people that come in, especially with the players that are already there, because they'd have been so set in their ways for such a long period that someone coming in fresh and having fresh ideas, it's very difficult. And I always thought with both people following, Ferguson and Wenger would find it difficult, and it would take time to come back round again. But I'm sure they will at some point. But I think there's a bit of a way to go. Yeah, let's see how Arteta does. He looks like he's got the makings, but it's early days, and management's such a brutally difficult job.
I think when you look at those instances with Manchester United, when Ferguson left, obviously they got Moyes in, which didn't work out. Arsenal had obviously Unai Emery in, didn't work out. So in that transition time, I'd rather them kind of address the problem, and if it's not working, kind of half get rid of them before it gets too late and we're 6 years down the line and another change has to happen.
Yeah, well, it's difficult to know what's right and wrong. Obviously, you appoint a manager because you think he's the right man, and then sometimes it just doesn't work out. Other times, clubs are a little bit premature in getting rid of people. Sometimes there's no set way. There are no rules to how long somebody should be there. Sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes you get it right. In hindsight, it's easy. But it's a tough business, and it's mainly about recruitment and players. Obviously, the manager is an integral part. A bad manager can make you a lot poorer, but as long as most managers are pretty good. But it's really about recruitment, bringing the right people, whatever budget you've got, bringing the right people in at the right time, and that's not easy. And to be perfectly honest, fans can shout and scream about signings, and they want the signings, and when they come and it doesn't work out, they want them. You got it wrong again. It's not easy. You can never be sure about a footballer unless you get someone like Messi or Ronaldo. You can never be sure about a footballer until he actually joins your club, your team, how they settle in. There are so many things that need to come together. I don't know what the percentages would be of signings for certain clubs, but I think most of the time it doesn't really work out that well. So it's difficult. You need a little bit of luck on the transfer market sometimes.
It is, absolutely. Just remind me, Gary, did you work with Wenger when you was at Grand Passat?
No, Arsene Wenger came in when I left. In fact, he took my apartment when I left.
Oh, really?
In those days, we had fax machines, and I left the fax machine there. And I think David Dean mentions it in his book that when he was negotiating with Arsene Wenger when he was at Grand Passat, that they used to send faxes to each other. And David Dean said he used to get the fax, and he still had my name on the top of the paper. I don't know whether I should have got commission or percentages out of that
Probably,
deal.
Yeah.
But no, but that's true.
Gary, let me ask you kind of, we can roll these two questions into one. Who would you say of the whole kind of Premier League era, and this is a question very subjective, has been the overall best player to have ever played in the Premier League? And who do you think currently today is the best player that plays in the Premier League?
Okay, well, I think the first one has two answers. I think the first one, if you say the best player that's ever played in the Premier League, you'd have to say Cristiano Ronaldo, because what he's done subsequently, albeit whilst he was in the Premier League, they were the early years. So if you judge it, therefore, through longevity and achievements over a period of time, I would personally go Thierry Henry.
Right, Gary.
But you know, if you just say the best player to have ever played in the Premier League, it's undeniably Ronaldo. But I think you have to judge it the performance of that player during his Premier League period over a degree of time and longevity. And I for me, it's Henry.
So whenever I'm not that I'm asked this question, but if I had to pick two, I'm obviously biased towards Arsenal. I kind of put Henry and also Dennis Bergkamp in there as well, as he's definitely
a lot of great players. Yeah. I mean, Bergkamp was up there. Absolutely, no question about that. I mean, we've had so many great players in the Premier League.
Cantona, people will go back and say Eric Cantona as well.
Yeah, people will obviously sometimes kind of veer towards their own club and a little bit of, you know, bias and stuff like that. But you know, we've had a lot of great players come from overseas. You know, David Silva and Aguero and company at Manchester City, and obviously, you know, so many great players too at Manchester United. You know, even a few homegrown players now, like Harry Kane. I'm only mentioning that because he's Tottenham player, obviously. And you asked me then, of course, which I completely forgot. The follow-up question was, who's the best player in the Premier League now? I don't know, De Bruyne maybe. Kevin, he's an unbelievable talent, possibly at the moment. You know, Mane and Salah at Liverpool, and there's so many great players. Kante was a particular favourite of mine, but that's my kind of Leicester bias. So yeah, it's a difficult one, but I think De Bruyne, when he's been fit again this season, is sensational football.
Just kind of finishing on that Premier League era, I suppose. It is a strange thing. The strangest thing that's ever happened in the Premier League was obviously the stunning title win from Leicester a few years ago, which, I mean, it's just it's not an underrated achievement, but when you kind of really look at Chelsea, United, Arsenal, and now Liverpool, who have kind of been Premier League champions in a 25-year plus period, for any club to break through and kind of win a Premier League title win, that is phenomenal.
I totally get what you're saying. I mean, obviously the other clubs had to be going through kind of transitional phases. Granted, take all that. But despite that, it was impossible what happened. I mean, it's just, you know, it's like the season before they won 7 of the last 9 games to escape relegation on the last 1 week of the season or something. They were a team of journeymen at the time, you know, rejected at different football clubs, just thrown together with Claudio Ranieri, who never won a league, and in any club he'd ever been to. Right, he managed loads of clubs, great clubs all over the continent, and comes together. It's just the most beautiful story. You know, it's a back four of Simpson, Fuchs, Wes Morgan, and, you know, Danny Simpson. It was just Robert Huth and just those guys. You know, there was hardly any. Everything went right. They hardly had any injuries. They get a winning run going together. Other teams slipped up here and there. The last few weeks of the season, I was still convinced they would collapse at some point, but they stuck together. Obviously, we had a couple of stars, 3 stars in Kante, Mahrez, and Vardy, and they were brilliant all season. But I still have to pinch myself when I think about it. I still get sometimes a little bit emotional when I think about it. It's sitting down in my house here with my boys every Sunday, because obviously I work Saturdays, but towards the latter stage of the season, all the games were played on a Sunday. We'd sit there. It'd be excruciating. But they kept winning 1-0, 1-0. And the closer it got to the end of the season, the more agonising it got, because the thought of them they're not doing it was just too much to bear. And it was actually punishing to watch, but it was also bloody glorious. And I've said this before, but I've obviously played top sport all my, most of my life. But my favourite sporting moment of all time is Leicester winning the league. It was just incredible.
I mean, you talk about like these kind of situations in football where like Greece won 2004 Euros, but that's manageable over like 10 or so games. Like to be consistent over a whole 38 game period.
And what's more, KUGAN, they won it by 10 points. People sort of forget that. 10 points they won it by. I mean, it was just, I'll never forget, as long as I live, the moment Hazard bent. I know Leicester weren't playing, but Hazard bent out in the top corner against Tottenham, which meant Leicester, it was like, we were just downstairs crying our eyes out, my kids. It was just incredible. It was beautiful. Really beautiful story.
Absolutely. Gary, I know you're a big boxing fan as well. And obviously we're a boxing channel here. So I don't know how aware you are of the situation regarding boxing, but as far as we know, the middle of July, boxing will return to some degree behind closed doors. We're seeing Eddie Hearn outline his back garden as a matchroom fight camp, etc. Frank Warren's going to do something similar somewhere else. So boxing's on hold at the moment, but I'll just kind of take you back to February, where Tyson Fury defeated Deontay Wilder in a stunning performance in Vegas. What did you make of it?
Oh, I thought it was one of the great boxing performances. I mean, I've never seen, I don't think, someone dominate it right from the very start to its end. He was totally in control, measured, hardly took a blow in the whole fight, picked him off easily. I thought it was just one of the most polished performances I've seen against, obviously, a dangerous man. He's not technically the best boxer I've ever seen, but you don't want to get hit by him, that's for sure. I thought he was great. And I love Fury's unbelievable personality and a character, and the way he's come back from all his troubles and his problems. And he's obviously as well, apart from, he's obviously massive personality, but he's also one hell of a boxer. I mean, technically so good. And he's quick for the size of him. He's so quick and evasive. He's almost as hard to hit as someone like Mayweather.
When I was just talking about this yesterday, that 3 years ago I was in Monaco with Tyson Fury, and he was nearly 28 stone in 2017.
Yeah.
So, and I think a lot of people kind of looked at Tyson then and thought to himself, "You're not coming back." I mean, he was huge, and he was quite visibly huge, because obviously he's 6'7" or whatever he is, 6'8". 28 stone. I think a lot of people back then, and it was only 3 years ago, believed that Tyson Fury would never be in a boxing ring. But from that point to kind of that moment in Las Vegas, just the willpower and the transformation of what's happened there is inspiring for people to see that kind of journey.
Absolutely. Even when you look at the first fight with Wilder, when he knocked him down at the end, you thought that was it. And that was it kind of encapsulated the last 3 years in just a few seconds, didn't it? The fact that he got up, and then you thought, my God, where did that? And he kind of rallied at the end. I thought it's one of the great sporting comebacks. We've seen, I think we've seen one or two in recent times, like Tiger Woods has done it as well. But this is kind of, similar kind of stuff from Tyson. I'm just, let's hope we can see some more fights from him. Let's hope he fights Anthony Joshua at some stage. That's obviously what we all want to see. That's the kind of dream fight for this country, that's for sure.
I was going to come on to that. Obviously, Anthony Joshua suffered his first defeat last year in New York against Andy Ruiz, in a very shocking defeat back in June. Obviously, reclaimed his titles in Saudi Arabia. Now everyone's talking about that fight. A couple of questions on this, Gary. There's a strong possibility that this fight will not take place in the UK, which is going to obviously have the boxing nation up in arms if that's to be the case. So what do you think about that? And also, is there someone you favour to win that fight between Joshua and Fury?
I think, coming to your last point first, I think if you'd have asked me 18 months ago, I'd have gone strongly with Joshua. Now, I would actually fancy Tyson Fury to do it. If he can stay in the same shape as mentally and physically that he is at present. Saudi Arabia, I think, I don't know, God, worry about taking sporting events to there. I'd be slightly uncomfortable with that in some ways, but, sport is about also economical importance, especially at the moment. I think it'd be a real shame. I think it'd be marginally better in terms of viewing than if it were in America, only because I'm saying this because of the time difference, not politics, obviously, aside. Because obviously they have 3 hours ahead, so you could actually feature it on a Saturday evening and hopefully before match of the day, not during it, because that's really annoying, both in terms of we'd lose a bit of audience and also, more importantly, I wouldn't be able to watch it, which would be awful. And I'd try and not know the result, which would be impossible. So yeah, I've got mixed feelings about where it would be held. I mean, it's a massive British fight that you would love to see in Britain. Of course we would.
I mean, it's not necessarily Saudi Arabia. There's offers from the Middle East, other regions, the Far East, etc. So it could generally end up anywhere. We don't know at this point, but I suppose as long as we get to see the fight happen at some stage next year, then I think
as long as you don't have to get up at 5 or 6 in the morning to watch it. Or trying to hang on all night, because lots of times I get home on after match of the day. I usually get home between 3 and 3:30 a.m. because we film it in Manchester and I live in London, so I come back down after the show. And then sometimes when there's a big fights in America, it kind of works, but trying to stay awake from 3:30 and then the fight doesn't happen until about 5:30, 6. You just then nod off and miss it. And then, so I've so I'm hoping it will be a kind of about 9 o'clock would be nice, just before us, and then people switch over when it's done.
I've got to tell you, Gary, it took me a good couple of seasons to get over Des Lynam leaving Match of the Day and you replacing him. And then because as a child watching Match of the Day with Lynam and Hanson and Brooking and kind of that combination, but I think you've kind of really made it your own over the years, haven't you, where it's like you think of Match of the Day and obviously you think of yourself. So yeah,
thank you. That's very kind. I mean, for me myself, I think I was the only person in the whole of the country that was glad that Des Lynam left, because I thought I might have a chance at the job, because I was doing Football Focus at the time. And I never forget, I was driving into the old BBC television centre in White City, and the guy on the gate there, and I pulled in, and he went, "Have you heard the news?" I went, "What news?" This was a Tuesday, because we always had Football Focus meetings on that day. And I said, "What news?" He went, "Des Lynam's left." I went, "Has he?" He went, "Yeah." He said, "Who do you think they'll give the job?" I went, "I better find out, hadn't I?" So I went in and I was kind of told there and then, even though we couldn't put it publicly. But but big boost to follow. I mean, I love Des Lynam. I learned so much from Des. I mean, he's the doyen of sports presenters, and he tried the witty. He taught me to be brave enough to try to be funny on occasions. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Some people find it funny, some people won't. Little things like introducing the guests. He never said, "And here with me this evening." He'd always say, "Here with us this evening," bringing in the audience together. Just little things, and his calmness and his manner. I just wish I could have his voice. I would really love his voice.
I used to love watching like Alan Hansen as well. I used to always, because Alan Hansen was always the one that was a little bit maybe off key with some of his comments, and he was probably very obviously Liverpool biased towards Liverpool, should we say. But whenever you got a comment off, a compliment about your team off Alan Hansen, I used to always take note of it, because I'm thinking, if Alan Hansen's saying it, I'm taking notice of this. So.
Yeah, I think Alan was great, and Alan, I think went down a path that many other pundits have followed in terms of how analysis was given, because he was the first one really to try and explain things tactically that went on a football field that you wouldn't obviously see for yourself at home. Whereas I think prior to Hansen's era, it was very much show the goal. He went down the wing, he crossed it, and he headed it in. Yeah, we can see that for ourselves. The good pundits tell you things that you don't notice. There's so many times I sat with Alan Hansen when I was presenting, and he would talk about a defensive formation and how they were doing it, and what they were doing wrong or what they were doing right. And I'd go, "Oh yeah, God, I played at the top level, but I was, to be honest, I only really knew about goal scoring strikers and stuff. But he was very good at that. And obviously now lots of people do that kind of analytical, tactical thing, and especially on channels where they've got so much more time. Yeah, but like Match of the Day, it's difficult. We do it, but obviously we don't. We have to show all the matches that if we drop the last match because we've done too much analysis, we get hammered. So yeah, I think he obviously carved a path that others have followed.
Absolutely. Gary, just kind of jumping back to boxing, there's an influx of retired heavyweights that are deciding to make a comeback, as I'm sure you're aware. Notably, Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield and these guys. Split opinion from people in boxing. Some people are like, if they're going to fight people of their same age and kind of era, then, and it's an exhibition, then fair enough. But these guys can't actually physically come and compete with the modern day heavyweights. And I don't think that's been spoken about to a degree. But what do you think of these guys coming back?
I think, you could have like a seniors tour like they do in golf, couldn't you? I mean, it'd be great to see these first, because that was a golden era, wasn't it? Heavyweight boxing. It's all about Holyfield and Tyson, mate. Tyson, Christ. I mean, he looked powerful, though, didn't he? He's got himself in amazing shape. But obviously, you can get yourself in shape, but we all know that you can't fight Father Time, and you're not going to be as quick, you're not going to be as powerful. It's just not possible. But there's kind of there's an interest, isn't there? I mean, you kind of want it to happen just to see what it would be like now, fighting somebody half good. But you would also worry for him a little bit, although I wouldn't worry too much about Mike Tyson. He'd probably be okay.
It's mad because he announced it, then Holyfield says he's wants to kind of come back. And I suppose if you were to put them two in like a kind of exhibition type thing, people would watch it, regardless of whether
they would, with interest. Of course, it would be fascinating. Just it's like with golf when the greats finish, but they go on to like the senior tour, and it's still a good quality if they're playing amongst themselves, and it's still watchable. And I'm sure that would be more than watchable. I might make a comeback myself and see. I think no, you've got Aubameyang. I won't get in your team.
Who would you pick now if you could come back into one of the teams now, whether that be a Leicester, a Barca, or whoever? Who would you play alongside with up front?
Yeah, I think probably I've been asked this question a little bit about who would you sooner play for, Guardiola or Klopp? Because the two teams you want to play for at the moment would be either City or Liverpool. I think, funnily enough, I would probably suit City's way of playing than Liverpool's way of playing, because the way Firmino plays, he drops on the other wide players, and I'm kind of more of an on-the-shoulder man and a box player, whereas Firmino's more involved in the build-up play. So I think I'd actually be suited to City because they play the wide men. They get so many crosses across. I mean, Liverpool do as well. I'd score loads of those teams, either teams, to be perfectly honest. But I think probably just City at the moment for selfish reasons, because I think I'd score more goals.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Gary, is it fair to call you one of the most controversial people on Twitter?
I don't think so. I don't think I'm particularly controversial. I have views on things. I have interest in politics. I don't think they're pretty, wacky views at all. I mean, I obviously say what I think about things in terms of, I kind of started with going at FIFA a little bit when they were so corrupt, and I was proved right with that in time. I supported refugees and their dreadful plight, and I've always had sympathy for these poor people who have to flee a war-torn country and trying to risk their lives, their families' lives, across water, etc. And I just couldn't really understand why we don't have a bit of empathy towards their situation. And I kind of got hammered for that. I never quite understood why. I don't know what the complaint was with that one. Politics-wise, obviously there's the Brexit thing, but was I right to do that? I don't know. I just gave my views. It's fine. I don't mind people disagreeing. It's fine. I just don't I don't understand how divided we became about it. I mean, I've got friends that, Brexit, we've had discussions about it. It doesn't alter the fact of our relationship or our friendship, or it doesn't make me feel less about that person because they have a difference of opinion than me. But on social media, that's what happens. If someone's had a different opinion to you, they somehow don't like you anymore. And it's only one thing. The truth is, if we actually met, there are probably so many subjects we'd actually agree about that it wouldn't matter. And I find it very interesting that how it is on social media, how divided it is. I mean, politically, I'm neither right nor left. People think I am, but I'm not. I'm kind of fairly central. On some things, I'm a little bit to the right. Lots of things, I'm to the left, but not massively so either way. So yeah, and I've never said who I voted for. Never tried to put pressure on people to vote for a certain party. So yeah, I speak about my football as well. I should perhaps stick to it, people say, but but that's what the social platform's for, to give you views. If people want to disagree, then fine. But I don't think I'm particularly controversial.
I think I was discussing this the other day about Twitter, and it's a funny, mad world, Twitter, because
It really is.
Like, everything going on in the world, obviously, that's what it's there for. It's for people to kind of voice their opinions, etc., etc. But also, I've noticed over the last couple of months, especially more so, where everyone's got more time on their hands, that everyone likes to kind of cite outrage to everything, and like for the sake of it, not particularly because they believe what they're saying or anything. It's almost like it becomes something to tweet about and something to kind of attack someone over. But I suppose that's when you open yourself up to that, then I suppose it's give and take in them situations.
Yeah, it's give and take. I'll go back to my point. Yes, have a discussion, have a debate, disagree, but we don't need the anger. What's the anger about, really? Obviously there's things that people will be angry about. I tweeted today about that poor black guy in America getting murdered, and then there was another video that went out that I saw today, and that makes me angry and upset. Things that you see like that, obvious massive racism issues, and judging people by the colour of their skin. I've never understood. It's just madness. So yeah, but when you're actually debating someone about a certain topic, I never get angry. I mean, I never got angry when I played football. I don't have a temper. It's one of the reasons I didn't get booked. Well, the fact I never tried to tackle anyone. So yeah, I don't get angry. And sometimes, the sad thing is the people that are obviously nasty on there spoil it for the rest of us, really, because most people, they want to have a little discussion, but in the end, there's so much kind of hatred from the small minority that you stop looking at your replies, because you might see 10 reasonable replies and then 2 really nasty ones, but it's the nasty ones that stick in your mind. So I kind of stopped looking at that entry of replies. I just see the replies of people that I follow, or blue tick holders or whatever it is, something like that. So even then you still get the odd one. But by and large, I think it's a shame, because it's a really lovely way to engage with people that you wouldn't ordinarily be able to engage to. But the small minority ruin it for the rest.
Obviously in a completely different situation to you, but obviously Piers Morgan has come under a lot of criticism over his kind of campaign on Twitter over the last couple of months. And I think a lot of people reading what Piers Morgan's saying, you'll agree with some things, or you might agree with the majority, etc. But Piers Morgan's position within the country as one of the top kind of people in that field is a lot different to someone like yourself tweeting your opinions about that, because obviously his job is to portray the news out there.
Yeah, Piers is very robust. I know Piers really well. I mean, he's a friend of mine, and again, with Piers, there are a lot of things I agree with him about, and there are some things I disagree with him about. And we've had arguments on Twitter, but it's not, but not in a nasty way. And then when we meet, we're just mates. And he's deliberately controversial sometimes. He knows he wants to provoke people. That's his kind of play. He's always been like that. He's a tabloid editor. You've got to remember that. He used to be. So once a tabloid editor, they know what they're doing. He's a smart guy. I think in the last few months, he's asked, he's been one of the people in media doing a, forensic job on the government. I think it's important, especially at the moment. We have got an incredibly high death rate, sadly. It is difficult for the government. These are, as been said a million times, how unprecedented these times are. But it's not gone that well. And questions have to be asked. That's their job. People's job, like journalists like Piers Morgan, is to constantly ask the politicians important questions. They won't come on his show now, so that's difficult. But there are lots of people doing a good job during this, and it's important. It's just it's dreadfully difficult at the moment. People losing their lives all over the place. Emotions are running really high. So it's difficult for everyone involved, and we don't know what the right way is. We don't know what the wrong way is completely. But looking at it at the moment, it seems that the countries that locked down early, locked down hard, seem to have done the best, and we probably didn't do it early enough.
Mm. Just kind of finishing on Piers Morgan there. I don't have no issue with Piers Morgan kind of challenging like government ministers and trying to get those answers, because I suppose his approach is questionable to a certain degree of how he's doing it. But I don't think anyone can really knock Piers Morgan for trying to get answers with the most influential people in the country. I don't think we can really knock him for that as such.
No, that's his job, and they have to, he's probably so strong that's why the government won't go on. But I don't agree with that either. That's not the right thing for them to do either. So it's a tough one for journalists as well, because obviously they're accused of bias and this, and whether, especially if you're working for the BBC. But this situation we're in now shouldn't be about a person's politics. It shouldn't be about whether you're a Brexiteer or a Remainer. It's got nothing to do with it. This is about what's right and wrong and truth, and what, people being honest to us and telling us the situation. This is something where we should all be together, not fighting over petty tribal politics. Who cares whether you're a Tory or a Labour supporter or a Liberal or whatever you are? Who cares at the moment? It's about looking after each other. And I've seen a lot of that, though. People, I think, if there's something positive coming out of this thing, is that there's a lot of togetherness and a lot of people helping each other, and a lot of empathy towards the NHS, for example, and the brilliant jobs that they're doing. And that's important, and that's now being recognised. And hopefully when it comes out of this, it'll be recognised with a pay rise for them. So I think there's a lot of good. And you just don't want people fighting over each other because they're a Tory or a Labour Party member. I don't think that's just not important. It's 4.5 years to the election. Let's worry about that then.
Mm. I wasn't kind of planning on us talking about anything to do with the situation here, but obviously while I've got you on. But Gary, I don't want to deeply go into this, but have you got anything you kind of want to mention about this situation with Dominic Cummings? I know you've tweeted everything and you've said everything that you wanted to kind of on social media, but
my view right from the start was, listen, he messed up, but we all mess up. We've got rules. Some people break rules. We all break rules at some point in our life, even our own rules. Just fess up, just say, listen, I wasn't thinking straight. I went up there. I shouldn't have done it. It was wrong. I've broken the rules. I shouldn't have gone to a cast. I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have done it. Please don't, the rest of you, do that. And put his hands up. Then you go, okay, we make mistakes and we'll make our judgments, and they'll make the decisions as to his position. But don't give us don't give us the nonsense. Don't give us all that cock and bull story about testing your eyesight and driving. I mean, don't insult our intelligence. That's how I feel about it. And I wouldn't go much further than that. I don't know Dominic Cummings. I don't, he's not someone anyone voted for. He's just an advisor to the government. But it just seems, like, come on, what happened to the truth? It's like Trumpism, isn't it? It's just lies. We don't want lies. Just tell us the truth, the story. People mess up. It's all right.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was just finished off by saying when he was giving his statement the other day, I like he was probably scrolling through social media to kind of see everyone's comments, and the one thing everyone was saying is, there wasn't no apology, and that was the thing that was being highlighted. It was almost like
he would not apologise. Why don't people say sorry now? He pretty much admitted he broke the rules 3 times during his own statement. Just say, I got it wrong. People do. We get things wrong. Just apologize. Why are politicians in particular so reluctant to say sorry? There must be, I don't know, it's legal reasons or whatever it is. I just don't get it. If football digresses, they come out, the clubs probably advise them and stuff like that. They've broken lockdown, whatever it was. They make mistakes. They're young men, they're inexperienced in life. And they come out and they give a proper apology. I'm really sorry, blah, blah, blah. And then we either accept it or we don't. But at least they do say sorry.
Yeah. But we do move on from it. When there's an ending to it, like what you're just saying, we do end up moving on from it and not talking about it. So Gary, just before you go, I did kind of open it up a little bit to some Twitter questions. And I did put half sensible on there, but obviously it makes for Twitter, so we'll try and find these half sensible ones. 1 second.
taking a lot of finding to get a sensible one.
No, it's fine. A lot of people, and I'm going to start you in really easy here. And there's been a lot of questions. I don't know if this is tongue in cheek or not, but they are asking about your favourite flavour of crisps at Walker's.
That's funny. It's one of the questions I get most asked more in life than anything else, except for one other thing, and that was what did I say to about Gazza in the World Cup with the Bobby Robson thing. But they made salt and vinegar all day long.
Salt and vinegar.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Okay, it's like a boxing related one. This is from David. He says, could you ask him who his favourite boxer is right now, and who does he think is the #1 heavyweight in the world? We have kind of touched on that.
Yeah. Well, I think probably Fury at present would, I think, edge it, but I think that decider of perhaps him and Joshua at some point would be great. What was the other question? Forgot.
Who's one heavyweight, but who's your favourite one? I don't know if that's the same thing.
Favourite, yeah. I don't know. I know Anthony Joshua quite well. I've met him a few times. I've done a couple of documentaries with him, so might be slightly biased towards Anthony and that. But yeah, probably Joshua.
Who would win in a street fight out of you and Piers Morgan?
Do you know what? I'm not a very good fighter, but I'd definitely have him.
1 second. I'm trying to skip through some of these. Okay. Ask him about his time in Barcelona. Really hear him speak of that part of his career.
Well, I've spoken about it a lot. It was a fabulous 3 years. I loved it. Got off to a great start. Scored a couple in the first 20 minutes of my first game. And obviously a hat-trick against Real Madrid and the Classico, which I rarely mention. So great highlights. A lovely time. Unbelievably big football club. And to be part of that. And in those days, there were only 2 foreign players, of course. I went there with Mark Hughes, who actually struggled. He was a bit too young, Mark. He was only about 20, 21. Wasn't really ready for it and had a hard time. But I absolutely loved it. I mean, it's a mad club, but huge. I mean, they have 2 daily newspapers in Catalonia, Barcelona, that just basically cover the football club. So it's like 40 pages just on Barcelona every day, daily newspaper. That's how mad it is. You press conferences all the time. And it's probably grown since then because there's so much more media these days and so many more demands on the players. But yeah, it's a bit of a madhouse, but wonderful. I had a great kind of rapport with the Barcelona fans. They've always been lovely to me. Even when I go back, they're very kind. I love the club. I love the club and I love my time there.
Did he ever have a dust-up with an opponent or a teammate during his playing career? I'm assuming it was physical.
No, I didn't. No, I don't have that, but I had a fight. I might have had one at school, and definitely with my brother a bit. But I know. And there was always a rumour that Steve Bull hit me in 90 or something. And it's absolutely poppycock. It's rubbish. I don't know where that came from, but it's not true.
A lot of people asking if you're trying to be a politician in the future.
God, no. God, stressful job. It's worse than being a football manager. No, thank you.
Obviously, a lot of people talking about Gaza, and obviously it was his birthday the other day.
Yeah.
Lovely reminder of you of the free kick from Wembley.
Yeah.
But yeah, what was it like, obviously, playing alongside Gaza?
It was wonderful and frustrating. I've been calling me a bit lately. He seems to be in good form, so that's always an encouraging sign. Great teammate, so funny. And his practical jokes, and he was very smart with them. He did them all loads of stuff every day. Playing with him was both exciting and frustrating sometimes because he played a bit like he was on the schoolyard, where he just dribbled past, he wouldn't pass the ball. The only time he'd give it to you was if he knew you had no choice but to give it him back, or say Cameroon in the World Cup where he's completely knackered, so he passed it. But his ability and the things he did, and the goals he scored, and the games he would save through his absolute sheer individual brilliance were amazing. And But it was, I loved playing with him, and he was such an incredible talent. I mean, what the things he could do, great. Most gifted, naturally gifted player I think I would probably have played with.
A lot of people asking me about the time where you relieved yourself on the pitch. A lot of questions about that. I've rephrased some of these, by the way.
Very wise.
Any comment on that?
No, well, when you got to go, haven't you? What do you do? Do you put your hand up and say to the ref, "Can I leave the pitch? I need the loo." I mean, what was that? It was kind of, I've been holding, I've been ill during the night. I wasn't very well, but I didn't tell anyone because I wanted to play. I know I wasn't one of those players that needed to be 100% to play. I would need to be 10% to play. I played so many games with the adrenaline gets you through. And I was in the first half and I was starting to cramp up, and I just about managed to survive till half time. And I got in, I went to the loo, and then I came back out and I felt a bit better. I might be right now. Like 10, 15 minutes started cramping up again. And then the ball went down their left-hand side and I kind of ran across. As I ran across, I relaxed a bit, and it just happened. We've all done it at some point in our lives, but you don't want to do it in a World Cup game that's being watched by billions of people around the world. So let's say it was a bit embarrassing, and then obviously I didn't know what to do. And if you look at the footage, you can see me looking up to Gary Stevens and going, "Shit, that's it." And then I had to try and get rid of it somehow. I was shoving out my shorts and I was doing the dog thing around on the pitch, and obviously. And the weird thing was, it was never mentioned for about 20 years. I mean, I told family and the players on the pitch, but it never came out publicly or anything. And I was interviewed in about 2010 by Ian Payne on the radio, and it was a long interview. And he said, at the end, "I'll ask you this." He said, "There's this rumour that you had like a problem in the Ireland game in the World Cup in 1990. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, you had a bit of an accent." And then I told the story, and then it kind of went viral, and it became this, if you Googled me, it was like Lineker shits on the pitch or whatever. It's like the first thing, and it became a thing. So, and then people started looking back, and they obviously found the footage, and it's quite obvious what's happened. So it's embarrassing, but it doesn't really, it's a bit cringe, but it was just what was I supposed to do? Just go off? Nah, I don't know.
Well, Jason Punchin did that, didn't he? And he obviously left the pitch to do that. So.
Well, yeah, maybe I should have, but what do you? And the other problem was with that. It was the the only other ground I can think of off the top of my head of any kind of proper serious football club is Burnley, where the dugouts were on the opposite side to the tunnel. So even at the end of the game, when I came off because I cramped again, about 10 minutes to go, I think, whatever it was, Bobby Robson brought me on. And I just wanted to go to the loo down the tunnel, but I had to go off on the side where the dugouts were, and I had to sit on the dugout with everyone else. And you could see them all shuffling away from me like that. But I was humming. And it was just everything that could go wrong went wrong. but yeah, so eventually I told the story, and that was it. And I probably shouldn't have. Anyway.
Dean Burns says, does he wish he'd stayed at Everton for one more season?
I think in an ideal world, I'd have liked another couple of seasons at Everton and then have given the opportunity to go to Barcelona. But you don't get to pick and choose the timings. Everton took the bid and left me with the decision, which was not easy. But I couldn't turn it down in the end, especially when a club's accepted an offer. You sort of think, well, don't not value me that much. So, but yeah, it was the best team I played for, Everton, the best actual side, best club side by a mile. We were banned from Europe as well, which is important because I think we'd have wanted, I never played the European Cup or Champions League, it's now called, because in those days you had to win the league to play in it. Everton had won the league. I would have played in the European Cup that season. I think we'd have been strong favourites. English teams were dominant at that point. That Everton team was fabulous. So yeah, I'd have won, I'd have won a title or two if I'd have stayed. So, but at the same time, I had to go.
We're just going to pick out 3 quick ones here. Apart from, this is from Daz Fieldhouse, apart from Ronaldo, Messi and Maradona, who are some of your favourite footballing heroes?
Blimey. I only just caught Pele. I watched the World Cup when I was about 9, when I played in 70, so I caught some of him, but not that much. Well, there's so many great players, aren't there? I mean, you've obviously mentioned some of the big three. I think the Brazilian Ronaldo was unbelievable. I mean, if he hadn't have had the injuries, that he'd have been doing everything that the other Ronaldo would have done in terms of his goal scoring ratios, etc. He was just fantastic. I played against many times Zico. What a gorgeous Platini, you know. I mean, we talk about his time with UEFA, etc. But what a footballer! Zidane, I've always loved watching him play. I'm going to go away after this, and then I'm going to say, I forgot to mention him. But they're just, you know, some of the names that come in mind. Cruyff, of course, who managed me for a season. It was, you know, he was still unbelievably best. He was still the best player in training every day. And did he know it? But he was, you know, unbelievable players.
Jake says, why did he never get into coaching?
It was never really my thing, for the same reason I wanted to get into presenting rather than be a pundit, because whilst I totally get being a striker and the movement and things, and my whole life revolved around that, I didn't probably see the overall picture and tactical from the back and the defensive and all that kind of stuff like a lot of the guys do. So I didn't really ever envisage me being a coach, and always looked at the media, particularly presenting, because I thought there hasn't really been a player that's played at the absolute top level. Bob Wilson did it, but he's a goalkeeper, that doesn't count. Bless him. And Jimmy Hill presented a little bit, but he didn't really play at the top level, and also he was mainly a pundit. So I just thought if I could crack presenting, there'd be a niche for me there. It'd give me the edge against all the other football presenters at the moment.
Right, final one here from Simon Flint. Which ex-player was the hardest, and who that would have made the best boxer?
Oh, so I thought you were going to say the hardest to play against.
You can answer that one as well, Gary.
I will. That would be probably two people I'd pick out there from my particular time. One was Des Walker, who Cloughie always put on me, man-to-man marking. And the other one would probably be Paul McGrath. He's a beast, man. He's so quick, so strong. I mean, you'd put him up probably as one of your fighters, maybe. Trying to think who else. There are a few. I'll tell you what, Shearer would be. I didn't play against him. I played with him over.
Really? Shearer, yeah.
He's strong, you know. He's strong. He's ripped, strong, just like a strong bloke. I think he'd be quite hard. Stuart Pearce.
Psycho, yeah.
Definitely psycho. Pat Vandenau.
Oh, yeah.
Another psycho, yeah. Peter Reid. There's a lot of, you know, hard footballers. The Arsenal back, the middle ones, Bolden, Adams and Martin Keown. Oh, God,
I'll tell you what, though, Righty, I remember that North London derby where Righty that chinned David Howells in a North London derby at
Righty's got temper. I mean, Righty, he'll be the first to admit that I mean, I love Righty, but you know, he can lose his rag, as we've seen many times in his football career. But you know, but what a player and what a bloke.
I'll tell you another one, Gary, as well. Paul Davis at Arsenal.
Yeah, hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and ask Glenn Cockerell about that. Yeah, he was one as well. But I suppose there's a.
You won't want to best probably with someone like Robert Huth either, would you?
No.
It'd be a bit of a unit to whack you.
Bit of a unit.
Absolutely. Yeah,
well, Gary, listen, much appreciate your time. Absolutely, you've given me longer than I thought I'd get today, so much appreciating. Have you just got any kind of final words for people watching?
Yeah, just keep enjoying the sport. It'll come back soon, a bit behind closed doors, but I'm sure we'll get back to normality eventually. But I think it's okay for us to admit that we actually miss it a bit, isn't it? I think it's all right to say that there are obviously things way more important at the moment, but you know, let's get some sport back so we don't have to just talk about it all the time. We can watch it.
Absolutely. Gary Lineker, thank you very much for talking to IFL TV today. Absolute pleasure, and keep yourself safe, you and your family, and hopefully, we'll catch up with you again soon.
Yeah, you too. Stay safe. Cheers, KUGAN. All the best.